All right, so today we're going to start by factoring trinomials in the form of ax squared minus bx and plus c. So what we've got here now is a negative middle term and a positive third term. When you've got a negative middle term and a positive third term, your factors are going to be negative and negative. Yesterday, we had a positive middle term and a positive third term, so the factors had to be positive, positive. But when this middle term is negative and the end term is still positive, your factors are negative and negative. So a couple of examples here. We're going to factor 6k squared plus 10k minus 10k. 6k squared minus 10k plus 4. Okay, now, if you see a problem like this, and in this case, everything in this problem is even. So if everything in the problem is even, you can pull a factor out in your first step. So all of these coefficients are divisible by 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull out a 2. And when I pull this 2 out, I divide it back into each term. So I get a 3k squared minus 5k plus 2. Now, be real careful when you list your factors. And don't forget this 2 right here. All right? So I'm going to bring over the 2 right now. I'm going to put the parentheses for my 2 binomials, and I'm going to put my signs in. All right, that way I'm not going to forget the 2, and I know what my signs are going to be. So I'm going to draw my table. And now here's what I'm factoring, is the 3k squared plus minus 5k plus 2. So my factors of 3k are 3k and k. That gives me my 3k squared. And my factors of 2 are 1 and 2. And they're both going to be negative. So I think I want the 1 to go with the k and the 2 to go with the 3k. Because now when I multiply 3k times 1, I get 3k. And when I multiply k times 2, I get 2k. And if both of these factors are negative, then both of these products are negative. And my negative 2k plus my negative 3k is equal to negative 5k. And my negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. So my 3 checks work out. So my factors are 3k minus 2 and k minus 1. All right, so let's try 2g squared minus 35g plus 17. All right, so there's no common factor to these 3 terms. And we've got a negative middle term and a positive end term. So both factors are going to be negative. Our factors of 2g squared are 2g and g. And then our only factors of 17 are 1 and 17. And we've got to get to a negative 35 in the middle. So if I put this 17 with the g, it's going to get multiplied by the 2g. And if I put the negative 1 with the 2g, it's going to get multiplied by g. So let's check this. 2g times g is 2g squared. G times negative 1 is negative g. And 2g times negative 17 is negative 34g. Negative 1 times negative 17 is positive 17. So these two will sum negative 35g. So all of our checks work. So we've got a 2g minus 1 and a g minus 17. All right, so I need to show you two more examples of factoring when C is negative. All right, so now we got 3x squared plus 4x minus 15. And just like last week, when this last term is negative, we have to have a positive and a negative factor. Okay? So one factor's got to be positive, the other one's got to be negative. Now, depending on where we place the factors will determine which factor is positive and which one is negative. So there are only two factors of 3x squared. We got 3x and x. But we've got multiple factors of 15. We got 1 and 15, and we have 3 and 5. And we've got to get to a positive 4 in the middle. So we can start with trial and error. If we take a 3 here and a 5 here, gives us a okay, that'll work actually. If we put the 3 up top, we're going to take 3 times 3x, that gives us a 9x. And we've got 5 times x gives us a 5x. Now, this is where you got to be real careful, okay? We need a positive 4x. That means that this 9x right here has to be positive, doesn't it? And if this 9x here has to be positive, then this 3 has to be positive. If the 5x needs to be negative, then this 5 right here needs to be negative. So x times a negative 5 is negative 5x, and 3x times a positive 3 is positive 9x. So now look, when we combine these two, negative 5x plus 9x is 4x. There's your check. 3x times x is 3x squared. Negative 5 times positive 3 is negative 15. All right, so those factors work. So we've got an x plus 3, and we've got a 3x minus 5. Now, when you're doing these tables, if you start the trial and error process and something doesn't work, don't erase it. Leave the table on your paper so that you'll know which location you've tried factors in. I've seen students erase their table and then 2 or 3 times down the road, they put the same factors in, try them again, and they still don't work. So leave your table on your paper. The other thing that you have to be sure of when you're done is that your factors multiply to the question asked. You got to make sure that your x times 3x is 3x squared, and that your x times -5 is -5x, that 3 times 3x is positive 9x, and that 3 times -5 is -15. And when you combine your like terms in the middle, you get a 3x squared plus a 4x minus 15. Your product at the end needs to be the same as the problem that you started with. That's your way of double checking your factors. The product of your two factors needs to be the same as the problem that you started with. So let's do one more of these. Let's take 10x squared plus 31x minus 14. None of the terms are divisible by a common factor. So we're going to have two factors. We're going to have a positive factor and a negative factor. Our middle term is positive. Our end term is negative. The only way to multiply to a negative at the end is with a positive and a negative. And now we start the process. Now these problems start getting a little more difficult because the factors of 10, you got 1 times 10 and you got 2 times 5. And the factors of 14 are 1 and 14 and 2 and 7. So when you start getting multiple factors for both the end term and the first term, it can get frustrating, but just stick to the process. So since we got to get to a 31 in the middle, I'm going to start with a 2x and a 5x. Okay. With the 2x and the 5x, I know that 5x times this 7 gives me a 35. And a 2 times a 2 gives me a 4. And with a 35 and a 4, I can get to a 31. So I'm going to take this 5x and I'm going to multiply it by the 7. And I get 35x. I'm going to take the 2x and I'm going to multiply it by this 2. And that gives me 4x. Now, my 35x needs to be positive. So my 7 needs to be positive. If I'm going to combine a 35x and a 4x to get a 31x, then my 4x needs to be negative. And if my 4x is negative, then this 2 needs to be negative. So now I got 5x times 2x, which is 10x squared. I've got my two middle terms that sum 31x. And my positive 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. So my checks work out. So my positive factor is going to be 2x plus 7. My negative factor is going to be the 5x minus 2. All right, so factoring with different signs today. and I've got a couple practice problems for you to do. Does anybody have any questions on any of those examples? All right, there you go.